The letter arrived on a Tuesday. It was thin, too thin. Margaret Ellis knew the weight of her retirement statements by feel. For 8 years they had arrived like clockwork, thick envelopes, predictable numbers, small confirmations that life after work, after loss, after decades of routine, was still stable. But this one? Thin. She stood at her kitchen counter in her small brick home in Phoenix, sunlight pooling across the tile. The kettle hummed behind her. A radio played soft jazz in the background, the same station she and her husband used to listen to on Sunday mornings. She opened the envelope carefully. Her eyes moved across the page once, then again, then a third time. Payment delayed due to administrative review. Administrative review. There were more words under it. Explanations. Timelines. Reassurances written in language that sounded helpful but meant nothing. Funds temporarily withheld pending internal verification. Margaret lowered herself slowly into the nearest chair. Her retirement payment was not extra money. It was not luxury. It was the difference between medicine and groceries. It was the property tax installment due in 9 days. It was the utility bill sitting unopened on the side table. She picked up her phone and dialed the retirement fund's customer service line. After 17 minutes of hold music and periodic recorded assurances that her call was important, a representative answered. Retirement Services, how may I assist you? Yes, Margaret said gently, trying to keep her voice steady. I received a letter saying my payment has been delayed. Let me pull up your account. Keyboard clicking. Pause. Yes, ma'am. Your account is currently under administrative review. I don't understand, she replied. I've been receiving payments for 8 years. Yes, ma'am. It's routine. Routine for whom? She asked softly. The representative cleared his throat. It's part of a compliance verification process. Compliance. There it was. That word again. Always polished. Always impersonal. How long will it take? She asked. Up to 30 business days. 30 business days. Margaret stared at the calendar on her fridge. 30 business days was nearly 6 weeks. Her hand trembled slightly. I don't have 6 weeks, she whispered. I'm sorry, ma'am. Is there anything else I can assist you with today? The line went quiet. Margaret hung up. In a house that once echoed with conversation, laughter, arguments about thermostat settings and burnt toast, there was now only silence. And silence feels heavier when it's financial. 3 states away, in a private conference room overlooking a sprawling film set, a different kind of silence filled the air. Dwayne Johnson, known to millions as The Rock, sat at a polished table reviewing contracts. The room smelled faintly of coffee and fresh paper. Outside the glass wall, production assistants moved briskly. Cameras were being adjusted. Someone laughed loudly in the distance. But inside the room, he was focused, until his phone vibrated. He glanced at the screen. Grandma Margaret. A small smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. Margaret Ellis wasn't his biological grandmother. But years ago, when he had first moved to Phoenix to train at a small gym before wrestling fame ever found him, she had been the neighbor who brought over casseroles, who told him to eat more than protein powder, who reminded him to call his mother. She had called him that big polite boy. He stepped away from the table and answered, Hey, Grandma Margaret. There was a pause on the other end, then a breath that sounded thinner than usual. Dwayne, she said softly. He stopped smiling. What's wrong? She explained it slowly, carefully, as if she didn't want to sound dramatic. She described the letter, the phone call, the words administrative review. She did not complain. She did not accuse. She simply stated facts. And when she finished, she said something that hit harder than any arena chant ever had. I don't want to be a burden. The air in the room shifted. Dwayne's jaw tightened slightly. You are not, he said firmly. Ever. I just thought maybe you'd know who to call, she said. They don't seem to hear me. He leaned back against the wall, eyes narrowing just slightly. They'll hear someone, he said calmly. The retirement fund's headquarters stood in a gleaming corporate complex in Scottsdale. Glass facade, clean landscaping, a bronze plaque by the entrance reading, Securing Tomorrow, Today. Inside, a board meeting was underway. Charts projected onto screens, risk assessments, market forecasts, language like liquidity buffer and compliance exposure floating casually across polished mahogany. Then the assistant entered quietly and leaned toward the chairwoman. There's a call for the board. She frowned slightly. We're in session. It's Dwayne Johnson. The room stilled. The chairwoman blinked. Put it through. The speakerphone activated. A calm voice filled the room. Good afternoon. Polite. Measured. Controlled. Mr. Johnson, the chairwoman said carefully. How can we assist you? I'm calling regarding Margaret Ellis. Account ending in 4821. Several board members exchanged looks. The CFO tapped quickly at his tablet. Yes, he said. Administrative review. I'm aware, Dwayne replied. There was no anger in his tone. That made it heavier. She's 76 years old, he continued. Her retirement payment was delayed. I'd like to understand the urgency of the review. The legal counsel leaned toward the microphone. It's standard compliance procedure. Randomized audit protocol. Randomized, Dwayne repeated. Yes. Then why was her payment withheld before verification was completed? Silence. Papers shifted. The CFO cleared his throat. As a precautionary measure. Precaution against what? No one answered immediately. The room, designed for confidence, suddenly felt smaller. Dwayne continued. She has received consistent payments for 8 years. No irregular withdrawals. No account flags. No identity disputes. Yet her funds were withheld without prior notice. The chairwoman straightened. Our policy allows for temporary suspension during review. I've read your policy, he said calmly. That landed. You've read. I had my team pull it, he said evenly. Section 9.4. Suspension of disbursement. It states suspension may occur when material risk indicators are present. A pause. What material risk was identified? The CFO looked at the compliance officer. The compliance officer hesitated. There was a system-generated anomaly. Define anomaly. Another pause. A change in mailing address formatting. The words sounded small in the large room. Dwayne inhaled slowly. She updated her apartment number from Unit B to #B after the post office recommended it. Silence. He continued, voice still level. You withheld a retiree's primary income over punctuation. The air in the boardroom felt different now. Not hostile. Exposed. Dwayne leaned forward slightly, even though they couldn't see him. I'm not calling to threaten anyone, he said. I'm calling to ask the board if this aligns with your mission statement. He read it back to them. Securing tomorrow, today. The words echoed differently now. Because from where I'm standing, he continued, you're destabilizing today over automated formatting. The chairwoman exhaled. We can expedite the review. How long? 48 hours. She doesn't have 48 hours, he replied. Another silence. Then he said something that shifted the entire energy. I'm requesting immediate release of her payment pending review completion. The legal counsel interjected. That would bypass protocol. Yes, he said. It would. The room braced. And I'd also like the board to consider revising a policy that allows automated holds without human review for seniors over 70. That wasn't just about Margaret. That was structural. The chairwoman glanced around the table. The optics alone were enough to make headlines. But this wasn't about headlines. It was about liability, reputation, ethics. Place us on a brief hold, she said quietly. The line muted. Dwayne stood in the conference room on set, staring out the window at artificial city blocks built for entertainment. He had played heroes. He had delivered scripted speeches about justice. But this was paperwork. This was policy. This was the quiet fight. After 3 long minutes, the line unmuted. Mr. Johnson, the chairwoman said, tone recalibrated. The board has voted to release Mrs. Ellis's payment immediately. Additionally, we will be initiating a review of our automated suspension protocol for retirees over 75. Dwayne nodded once, though they couldn't see him. Good, he said. We also extend our apologies. I'll let her know, he replied. Then he added, calmly but firmly, automation is efficient, but dignity requires discretion. And with that, he ended the call. Back in her kitchen, Margaret's phone rang. She answered cautiously. Mrs. Ellis, a new voice said, far more attentive than the first. We're calling to inform you that your retirement payment has been processed and will reflect in your account by end of day. She blinked. Oh, we apologize for any inconvenience. Inconvenience. Margaret almost laughed. After the call ended, her phone buzzed again. Grandma Margaret. She answered. It's handled, he said. There was a long pause. I didn't want special treatment, she said quietly. It's not special, he replied. It's fair. She wiped her eyes gently. You always did stand up too straight for nonsense, she said. He smiled. Not the red carpet smile. Not the flashbulbs popping grin. This one was softer. Quieter. The kind you wear when something heavy almost happened and didn't. Learn from you, he repeated. Margaret let out a breath that trembled on the way out. Well, she said, trying to reclaim her usual steadiness. I suppose that big polite boy grew into a very persistent man. He chuckled low. Persistent is polite with muscle. That made her laugh, a real one this time. The kind that loosened the air in her kitchen. Outside her window, a neighbor's dog barked. The kettle she'd forgotten about began to whistle again, sharp and insistent. Life resumed its normal soundtrack. But something inside her had shifted. I didn't sleep last night, she admitted. That hit him. Not because she was dramatic. Not because she asked for help. But because she hadn't. She had tried to solve it alone first. I kept thinking, she continued softly. What if they stop it next month too? What if I filled something wrong? What if I did something wrong? There it was. The quiet erosion. The way systems don't just withhold money, they withhold confidence. Dwayne's expression hardened slightly, but his voice stayed warm. You didn't do anything wrong, he said. A punctuation mark isn't a threat to a corporation. She shook her head, even though he couldn't see her. It felt like one, she said. Back in Scottsdale, the boardroom doors closed again. The atmosphere had changed. Not chaotic, not panicked, just unsettled. The CFO leaned back in his chair. Well, he muttered, that escalated. The chairwoman didn't smile. It didn't escalate, she said evenly. It revealed silence. The compliance officer tapped his pen against the table. We followed protocol. Yes, she replied. And that's the problem. That sentence hung heavy. Because protocol had insulated them for years. Protected them from lawsuits. Protected them from risk. But it hadn't protected them from optics. Or ethics. Draft a new amendment, she said. Human review required before suspension for retirees over 75. Immediate escalation to supervisor before disbursement hold. The legal counsel blinked. That will slow processing. Good, she said. The word landed with surprising force. If we can't process payments without destabilizing the people who depend on them, then we deserve to slow down. No one argued. Not because they were afraid of headlines, but because somewhere between randomized audit protocol and punctuation formatting anomaly, they'd heard themselves. And it didn't sound good. On set, Dwayne slipped his phone into his pocket. A production assistant approached carefully. They're ready for you. He nodded and stepped back into the controlled chaos of filmmaking. Lights, cables, directors calling out adjustments, controlled explosions being tested on fake city blocks. He had played heroes before, men who punched through injustice, who delivered monologues about right and wrong. But this was quieter. No soundtrack, no stunt double, just a phone call. Between takes, he pulled out his phone again. A text from Margaret. Deposit confirmed. I made tea. It tastes better today. He smiled. Then another message. I think I'm going to attend the Retirees Council meeting next Thursday. His eyebrows lifted. That was new. Margaret wasn't confrontational. She wasn't loud. But she was steady. He typed back. I'll be there if you want backup. 3 dots appeared almost immediately. Just sit in the back and look intimidating. He laughed out loud. Thursday evening arrived warm and golden. The Retirees Council meeting was held in a modest community center. Folding chairs, fluorescent lights, a table of store-bought cookies near the entrance. Margaret stood near the podium, smoothing the sleeves of her cardigan. There were about 30 people in the room. Gray hair, reading glasses, soft murmurs of conversation. And in the back row, wearing a baseball cap pulled low, sat Dwayne. He looked like a mountain pretending to be a folding chair. Margaret stepped to the microphone. Her hands trembled for exactly 3 seconds. Then they stilled. I received a letter last week, she began, voice clear but gentle. It said my retirement payment was delayed due to administrative review. Heads lifted. Murmurs. I was told it was routine, that it was compliance, that I should wait. She paused, and I nearly did. The room went quiet, but I realized something. Waiting quietly would not make the policy kinder. There it was. That energy again. Not loud, but undeniable. She explained the address formatting issue, the hold, the 30 business days. And then she said something that shifted the entire room. If it can happen to me, it can happen to any of us. That landed hard. A man in the second row raised his hand. My payment was delayed 2 years ago, he said slowly. They said it was identity verification. A woman near the aisle spoke up. Mine too. 3 months. I had to borrow from my daughter. The murmurs grew louder now. Not outrage. Recognition. Pattern recognition. In the back row, Dwayne leaned forward slightly. Not to dominate. Just to listen. Margaret straightened her shoulders. I'm not here to attack anyone, she said. I'm here to suggest we request transparency. Written policy. Clear thresholds. Human review before suspension. Someone clapped. Then another. Then the entire room. It wasn't thunderous. But it was steady. The kind of applause that means, we felt this too. Across town, the retirement fund's communications director stared at her email inbox. Subject lines stacked up. Request for policy clarification. Senior suspension protocol inquiry. Human review requirement? It was spreading. Not viral. Viral burns out. This was slower. Steadier. Retirees were asking questions. Not yelling. Not threatening. Requesting documentation. Compliance language. Board minutes. It's hard to ignore people who speak calmly and in writing. After the meeting, Margaret gathered her purse. Dwayne approached, removing his cap. Well, he said, that was something. She smiled. I didn't shake. You didn't. She looked around at the small cluster of seniors now exchanging phone numbers. I don't think it's just about me anymore, she said quietly. He nodded. It never was. They walked toward the exit together. The sky outside was streaked pink and orange, desert heat easing into evening cool. You know, she said thoughtfully. When the letter came, I felt small. He glanced at her. And now? She stopped at the door and looked back inside at the group, forming a small committee near the cookie table. Now, she said slowly, I feel organized. He grinned. Organized is dangerous. She chuckled. Polite, but persistent. There it is. They stepped outside. Somewhere in a corporate office, a draft revision was being circulated again. Language tightened, thresholds clarified, automated triggers restricted. Not because a celebrity made noise, but because retirees made sense. And when sense travels through systems long enough, it reshapes them. Margaret looked up at him one more time. Thank you for calling the board. He shook his head gently. You call me first. She considered that. Then she smiled. Not small, not uncertain. Grounded. Next time, she said, I'll call them myself. And the vibe? It wasn't about power anymore. It was about posture. And once you stand straight through something like that, you don't go back to shrinking.